Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. I'm Mike Drodas, Bible teacher and preacher. You've tuned into my YouTube channel, Solving the Prophetic Puzzle. The rapture is real. It's not something that was made up on the spur of the moment. Jesus Christ knew that the rapture is real. He knew that one day he would come back for us. In fact, in John chapter 14, verses 1 through 3, he told his disciples, "Don't let your hearts be troubled. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. But I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go, I will come back for you." Jesus promised his disciples that he was going to go away one day, but he would come back for them. The disciples didn't understand this. They thought, what do you mean? How are you going to go away? Little did they realize that everything Jesus predicted would happen exactly as he said. On a certain day, at a certain hour, Jesus Christ was crucified, nailed to a cross. He died, he was buried, and placed in a tomb. 3 days later, Jesus Christ rose up from the grave. He was resurrected, and he had a resurrected body, and he ascended to heaven to be seated at the right hand of God the Father. John chapter 20 gives us an account of this very thing that we refer to as Easter Sunday. Now on the first day of the week, John chapter 20. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. Then she ran and came to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved and said to them, "They have taken away the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Peter therefore went out, and the other disciple, and were going to the tomb. So they both ran together, and the other disciple outran Peter, and came to the tomb first. And stooping down and looking in, saw the linen cloths lying there, yet he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came following him, and went into the tomb, and saw the linen cloths lying there, and the handkerchief that had been around his head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded together in a place by itself. Then the other disciple came to the tomb first, went in also, and he saw and believed. They saw and they believed. What did they see that caused them to believe? They saw an empty tomb for one thing, but what they also saw was the burial cloths. You see, when Jesus was buried, they wrapped him up in burial cloths, similar to the way the mummies were wrapped up. They wrapped cloths around his arms, cloths around his hands, around his body. They wrapped his entire body up in cloths, and then they anointed that body with aloes and myrrh and different ointments, and that would harden on those cloths. And that body laid there for 3 days. Yet when it was resurrected, there was no body. The cloths were not ripped to shreds. It appeared, as some reports, it appeared that the body just came right through those burial cloths. And they saw that, and they believed. In fact, if somebody were to steal the body, they would have took the cloths with them. The cloths were left there. How did Jesus get out of the cloth? Maybe he wasn't dead. Maybe he was simply acting like he was dead. And after they rolled him up in the cloths, he somehow was able to get out of those. No. You know as well as I do, he was resurrected. Resurrected power came upon Jesus as he came up out of those cloths, and the disciples saw that, and they believed. And then they saw something else that we as Western people don't really understand. They saw the napkin neatly folded over to the side, the napkin that covered his head, and they realized something. You see, in the Old Testament times and in the Bible times, when a very rich man or king who had servants was eating a meal, and if he was eating his meal and he was going and he was finished, he would take his napkin, he would wipe his face, wipe his hands, and he would throw the napkin down, and then he'd walk away. This indicated that the servants, that he was done with his meal, that they could come in, they could take the plates, they could clean up the table, they could clean everything up. But if the master, if the king decided that he was not finished, he would take his napkin and he would neatly fold it up and he'd set it to the side. This indicated to the servants, Don't disturb anything. I'm coming back. Don't disturb anything. I will be back. And when the disciples saw that napkin laying to the side, it was as if a code was being sent to them from Jesus. I'm coming back. I'm not dead. I'm coming back. Yes, he is. 1 Thessalonians tells us exactly that. In our great rapture verse, 1 Thessalonians says, "For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words." How do I know that he's coming back? Jesus never lies. How do I know that Jesus is coming back? Paul tells us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. How do I know that it's not too difficult for Jesus to come back, to come down in the atmosphere, in the earth, above the earth, and to raise up the dead in Christ first, and then to transform us, to change us in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, and catch us away? How do I know that that's not too difficult for Jesus? The very fact that Jesus was placed in a tomb. The stone was rolled over there. Nothing could get in and nothing could come out. Yet Jesus came up out of the grave, came up out of the grave clothes, came up out of the tomb, and he ascended. And he's with at the right hand of the Father right now. How do I know that that's not too difficult? Because Jesus Christ already did the most difficult thing. He conquered sin, hell, and the grave, and he caused a way for all men to be born again. That is the greatest miracle. So keep looking up. Jesus Christ is coming back soon. If you haven't liked or subscribed yet, please do that as well. Every week I do a couple messages about the end times or about rapture. So until next time, as I usually say, keep looking up. Jesus Christ is coming back.